All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm back here with a guest who's been on the show before, and I think the last time you were on a formal episode of the podcast, I mean, I've talked to you in between then and now, but it was one of the quick hits episodes we did, which was, I guess, now in 2021, which seems like a really long time ago, but it also doesn't seem like a really long time ago. But you have a lot of new stuff, and I want to talk about that new stuff. So to start this off, if you want to introduce yourself and give a bit of background about what it is you do as a musician, that would be cool.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Michalishyn. I host a radio show at CKUW. I have a local small business, and I picked up synthesizer music at the start of the pandemic because I figured I wouldn't be seeing anyone for a while. And that not seeing anyone kind of just built my confidence. And I started a band camp and have been releasing music at a semi-steady clip. And recently I I brought back my record label because I figured that if I want to lose money on music, I might as well lose it on my own. So Sounds Escaping is back. It's a label that I ran up until a few years ago, and then I brought it back to put out my most recent album.
Well, and I do want to get into that most recent album because I've been listening to it since you kindly dropped it off for me. Yeah. And but before we get into that, like you said, you've been releasing music at a pretty steady pace, sort of since you started this. It seems like every time I see you doing something, you have more and more gear, or you're doing something different with it. And I've heard this before from people who do synthesizer-based music, that it becomes an obsession, and this becomes like this addiction to just get more and more stuff to kind of mess with and experiment with and fiddle around with. And looking at you now, I mean, I know most people are hearing this in audio form, but you're kind of surrounded by these lights of synthesizers and weird things happening on screens. So is that accurate though? Like, have you become kind of fully engulfed in this hobby?
Yes, not to the extent of some people. A lot of Winnipegger friends have gotten into the modular thing, and I can't afford that. This is stuff that I've been collecting, I guess, for the last decade and a half, and now I just finally have a room that I can kind of display it in. And I know all the other interviews that I've done on the edge of my couch. I've been up here for 8 hours getting this scene ready just so I can kind of try to impress people with my cheap toys and some expensive toys and lights and stuff. And there's like a thrum in the background. And I was setting up drones on 4 different machines just to kind of have playing in the background. It's something that I have always been interested in. I've been volunteering at the West End Cultural Center for 16 years. About maybe longer than that, 20 years, no, since I was 16.
Wow.
And music has always been a huge part of my life, going into the radio show, seeing music, collecting music, listening to it nonstop. Tried jamming with a few people over the last few years. I don't really play well with others. There's a few people that I can get along with musically really well. Leaf Norman, he's a local photographer. Now Synthesis, we get together about once, twice a week to make some noise and experiment with sounds. I've just been collecting and hooking things up in different configurations and just trying to find interesting noises. And if it works, I put it out. If it doesn't work, I leave it on the hard drive. I try not to agonize too much over anything. I just kind of, if it sounds good enough, it sounds good enough, and then I'm on to the next thing. And if it sounds good to me and I can listen to it over and over again, then I'll throw it up on YouTube or on Bandcamp. And if anyone else finds it, then it's just bonus.
For sure. And one of the things about synthesizers in general, and this has come up a bunch of times on this podcast, because I have kind of been, it's one of those genres of music where I never really had too much of a foothold in. And I've been sort of learning more as I go. Every few years, I'll interview a handful of other people making this kind of experimental electronic music. And I learned a bit more. But I mean, so I kind of got a crash course in modular synthesizers last year on an episode of the show. So what is the difference between what you're doing and that? Because I kind of have wrapped my brain around what that is, and it's very complicated, but what is the main sort of difference between what you're doing and what that is?
Well, modular is basically building your own synthesizer from components. You guys start off with an empty case that costs between $300 and $500.
Right.
And then you buy your own individual pieces. And the modulars, you have your modules that you have to connect in all these different ways. And I guess the only difference with what I'm doing is I have a lot of, well, pretty much all pre-made synthesizers, noisemakers, acoustic stuff that I can record and manipulate. So I guess these pre-built instruments are my modules, and then I have all these. I'm not going to turn my computer around, but I have a shelf full of adapters that I can connect RCA to quarter inch down to 1/8 inch.
Okay.
So I can connect everything in my lab here and just make noise with it. So it's pretty much, it's, same shit, different toilet. It's,
yeah, sure.
yeah, it's just electronics that I hook up in different ways to try to get a sound that's interesting.
And it's limitless, right? I mean, you can keep hooking up. As long as you have the right adapters and cords, you can just go forever.
Yeah, and there's always an idea of like, oh, what about this? Like, I bought a set of those Tibetan singing bowls. There was some online deal, and then I got a decent enough microphone that I can record it, loop it into a pedal, and then just off to the races from there. So it's just having fun with sounds and trying to find interesting combinations.
Well, and I think that, like, since you've been doing this, I mean, I have a copy of your first tape that you put out when you first started kind of releasing this, as yourself and actually putting it out there. And then the new disc, and then everything you've done in between, there's an improvement for sure, like from release to release. And again, it's one of these styles of music where I don't really have the language to explain what it is that I think has improved about it, but I think it has. Like, you seem to be, I don't know if it's that you're more sort of comfortable, maybe almost with the gear and with
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's a comfort thing. It's being comfortable with more of the tools and putting more of them together. So whereas some things are just a synthesizer and a couple of pedals, incorporating a drum machine or incorporating a sampler, or all of those things, and just kind of getting them to work together and kind of teaching myself how to mix and master and all the stuff that I don't want to pay anyone else to do because I can't afford it.
Of course,
I'm learning as I go, and it's just practice.
Well, it has a real tendency to become like one of those DIY punk rock things, not sonically, but aesthetically, where you totally can do it all yourself. And especially now with the internet and Bandcamp and all these options, like, you can be sitting in your lab for 8 hours a day making weird noises, and you can actually create music that people are going to listen to and enjoy.
Well, first and foremost, if I enjoy it, that's my number one goal. And if other people like it, that's a bonus for me. Like, I put out this CD on the Sounds Escaping Bandcamp, up on Discogs and all that stuff, and the furthest it's gone, someone actually bought a CD from Norway.
Wow.
That just feels good. I mean, I still have a whole bunch of CDs in the basement, but it's cool, and they slowly trickle out. And if I do play gigs, it's kind of cool having something that I can sell off my table.
Well, that was kind of what I was going to bring up next to you. You have actually played shows now. I mean, that's become kind of part of this thing, which was new for you.
Yeah, my first show was at the Graffiti Gallery for Space Doxa, and it was super, super surreal. I had a projection. I've got another toy that I can manipulate videos with. But John Crocker showed up, which blew my mind, and he came up and introduced himself, and we kind of geeked out over what I had. And then after I finished my set, he came up to me. He's like, "I saw Robert Fripp in Winnipeg in 1984, and I got the same feeling from seeing you play." And it just kind of melted my brain, because I knew who John Crocker was. Then you interviewed him, then I met him, and it just felt really cool. It's just a nice way to meet other like-minded musicians. Yeah. Well,
and it's kind of a cool continuum too, the fact that, like, not only was he doing this stuff 40 years ago, but there's still people doing variations on the same thing, and it's still this like consistent kind of, it's existed on a line like throughout all these decades and stylistic changes and stuff. And he can see something in what you're doing that appeals to him as someone who made that music way back then.
Oh, totally. And there's a lot of people who are coming up now. There's a group on Facebook called Voltage in Maine.
Yeah.
A lot of us synth weirdos are part of it. We sell stuff, we trade stuff, and there used to be get-togethers at Kelly Hughes Church. It's just interesting meeting people who you, in a realm that you wouldn't have maybe met them otherwise, and then just making new friends, making new connections, getting new ideas, getting inspired. Yeah, it's really cool. We're kind of like the freaks are finding each other, the synth freaks, I guess.
That almost seems like one of the good things to happen out of the pandemic too, is that all of these little subcultures are finding each other, because they've all sort of been stuck online 2.5 years straight, just kind of digging around, and they end up somehow encountering each other. And now that's opened up into the real world and up into real life, and people actually getting together for shows like that and for meetups and things.
Yeah, it's and just putting the stuff out there, like eventually you'll find someone who wants, like I found people who just wanted to throw me on a gig. My second gig, I played at Little Brown Jug,
Okay.
opening for Viva Non. He did a DJ set, and it was great. I didn't. Once again, it was one of those things where I was so close to the monitors, I couldn't really hear what I was doing, but the feedback was good, and I had a lot of fun, and that's, I think, the most important thing.
Well, that maybe brings up another question too. Is, I mean, on a similar vibe, you have someone like Chris Friesen, like Freaking Snap, doing he's making electronic music and he's using very, very limited equipment by comparison, but his stuff is all completely improvised. Like, how much do you agonize over the sounds before you put them into a finished piece? Because I mean, he's on one extreme of the spectrum where he's literally making it up on the fly and releasing 7,000 albums a week. What is your sort of process like by comparison?
I start with an idea and then a tone, and then I kind of start adding on to it. I also hate agonizing over things. Like, I don't want to think about it too much. Usually the best things that I come up with are just these two Chaos pads. Quick way to just like throw down some sketches and some loops. Yeah. And I usually come up with something super, super simple, but it just sounds amazing. And then, the Syntrix, you just plug in, you just connect the dots and turn some knobs and you get some stuff, and then run it through a couple of pedals and you might have a little pocket symphony. And it just, I try not to agonize. I just start off with a sound, or if I'm sitting downstairs and I'm listening to a podcast and I hear an interesting phrase that kind of inspires me, or if I am out with friends and I take a picture that looks really, really cool, sometimes I just play to that. Or I think of things that I have and I'm like, oh, this would sound cool if I recorded this, played it backwards, and then had it echo over and over into oscillation.
Okay.
I don't think about it too much. I kind of just try it, and then if it works out, it's a eureka moment. And if it doesn't, then I usually make a couple of knob turns and I have a completely different sound, and hopefully I like that one. But then again, I just don't agonize. I just play until I get bored and walk away for a little while.
It's kind of a nice thing to have when you're doing it on your own. You don't have to worry about,
exactly.
Other musicians being involved. You could just, you can take a break and come back to it whenever you feel like, and sit in your lab for 8 hours more and do what you're going to do. But
there's no pressure. It's just having fun.
Well, and you're releasing your own stuff on your own label, and so you're all in control of every aspect of it.
Yeah. It's great because I like to Photoshop too. I do a lot of Photoshopping for my business, and then sometimes I just find a really cool image online that I don't want to spend on the business, so I'll save it for myself and I'll just start mucking around, and I'll try to play to it. Like what I did for Clont is I came up with that cover, and I knew that I came up with the cover last year, and then this past summer I was in Edmonton visiting my then partner, and just started recording in the hotel room while she was at work, and kind of came up with this 90 minutes of outer spacey style music that I cut down to 65. Remembered that I had this cover and just kind of went from there.
So what is the concept behind Clont then? Because I mean, it describes itself as a official soundtrack or original soundtrack to Clont.
Yeah. So Clont, I just like the word. It's a Dutch word that just means lump.
Okay.
And then the outer space sound, I found this really cool picture of the moon that just looked kind of ominous. The font was just that old 70s kind of computer font. I like the purple. The movie doesn't exist yet. If someone wants to make it, the music's already there.
Right, you save money on that part, yeah.
Oh yeah, and the best thing that I think came out of it, Bad Gardening Review did a review of the album, but he reviewed the film, or they reviewed the film, because I don't know who it is.
Either do I. It's a mystery.
Oh, I love it, and it was the perfect review. It made no sense. It made all the sense, and the soundtrack was kind of secondary to that, but it just warmed me up so much, because it's everything that I wanted. It doesn't exist, but in this parallel universe, that Bad Gardening Advice is the king of the movie is a hit, and the soundtrack is going to win an award.
Yeah, I like that. That. Wait, I mean, obviously the movie doesn't exist, like you just said. Yeah. Was there any kind of idea behind sort of making it have a kind of thematic sound through it? I mean, I know there's a space thing, but like, was that a goal to make it sort of flow as if it was a soundtrack, or is that just the title you came up with after the fact?
It kind of just worked. I recorded for hours in a hotel room. When I flew to Edmonton, I have this little suitcase that I got from Princess Auto, and it fit this little synthesizer that I bought here, and then it had room for 2 guitar pedals. I had one of those battery packs, and I have a couple adapters that are USB to 9-volt. So I took 2 guitar pedals with me, a couple of cables, and I just did synthesizer into pedal number 1, then pedal number 2, and then about halfway through the session, I did synth through pedal number 2, then into pedal number 1 and into my recording device, and just mucked around with sounds and just kind of like let it breathe and let it evolve into this thing. And then I listened back to it when I got back to Winnipeg, and it just sounded great. I listened to it nonstop and remember that I had this cover, and then just kind of started doing layouts just for fun in Photoshop, and thought, I got Sounds Escaping in my back pocket. Now I'm label mates with Personality Crisis, Stretch Marks, Ovoids, Forbidden Dimension, and Pink Noise. So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I it's DIY. I did it myself. I had the resources, and I mean, it's my label. I can kind of do what I want, right?
So is Sounds Escaping going to be now used for your releases, and then whatever else if you decide to do anything different with it, or is it
pretty
just
much. Yeah, it's since I brought Sounds Escaping back, I've had and put out Clont, a few people or a few artists have gotten in touch like before when I was running the label, and they want me to put out their stuff, and I'm more than willing to help them. But it's one of those things where, like I said, I'm willing to lose money on myself. Running a record label, someone told me, is like ripping up $100 bills while taking a cold shower.
Yeah.
So it's kind of okay if it's only affecting me, but if it's I'll help anyone who wants to release their own stuff realize their dream without using my money. I will talk you through it. I will help you with whatever I can help you out with. But it's kind of a vanity label now. And but if something else comes up that tickles my fancy, then I'm up for that too. I was bouncing around an idea of doing a local compilation of electronic experimental music, and I was going to call it Treaty 1.0.
Okay, I like that. That's pretty good. Yeah.
I had a little mock cover of it and stuff, and then there's the people who I know would be on it, friends of mine, obviously. And then I kind of started thinking about all the people who would be upset that I didn't make a big call out, because I have enough people in my circles of synth nerds that I could get an hour, 80 minutes of music. And then some people started, everyone has an opinion, especially when they feel like they might be left out. Then they just start, throwing mud at it. So it's on the back burner right now. The cover is kind of going through some retooling, and I'm talking to some friends about potentially doing this thing. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of there's other bands that I reach out to. Like, I'm Instagram friends with Brian from Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet, and he's aware of the label, and he loves that it's kind of underground and no one knows about it for maybe archival Shadowy Men releases. But that's not happening yet. But if it happens, then it might come out on Sounds Escaping.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. Well, is there at this point? I mean, I know this is your first kind of release on the Reborn Sounds Escaping, but is there a way you decide kind of what releases of your own stuff go just on Bandcamp and which ones are going to go on a physical release? Has that been determined? Because I know you've been releasing, you would put out a tape, not on a label, just as yourself, and then you put out a bunch of stuff online, and then now there's this CD, and obviously it exists online too. But how do you sort of pick then, I guess, of all of your music you're making, what's worthy of, I guess, a wider release?
I think, well, for Clont, I just wanted to bring back Sounds Escaping and get something physical made. There's a few other things that are on Bandcamp that I wouldn't mind having physically. I think it was just a right time, right place for me. Like, I had enough money in the bank account that I could press up a small number of CDs. The music was fresh and new, and I hadn't shared it with a lot of people or put it up online yet for the 10 people who were going to listen to it. So it was just kind of a right time, right place. There's things that I'd like to release that are on my Bandcamp on like as a physical thing, kind of like get a couple of those EPs and just put them onto one disc and press up 100 copies or whatever, because that's what a lot of places are doing. They're letting you press up like a silver disc in as low numbers as 100. It's not going to cost you much. To press it up is less than $5 a pop, depending on how intense your artwork is. But I just like having that physical artifact. Even if
me too.
It's just cool to have have a physical thing to, show people or give to people or submit to radio stations or, review sites or local archivists.
Yeah.
It's just cool. It's cool to have something that you can actually have and hold and, show people. It kind of just makes it real instead of just being this ephemeral thing just that lives on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you know, I'm all on board for physical media,
Yeah.
so very nice to see you doing this. I'm glad Soundscaping is back in some form, because it was really cool what you're doing before. Again, the archive stuff obviously appeals to me, but you were doing digging up some cool Winnipeg history and putting it out there, and now you're doing new Winnipeg stuff, which is great too. At this point, what's the best way to find this music? I know, like you said, you have physical copies out there of Font. You're on Bandcamp. Where would you send someone to find your music, just kind of writ large?
If they can spell my name, Bandcamp is probably the best one. Patrick Michalishyn. You can slow it down or just rewind.
Or read the title of the episode, and then you'll
read the title of the episode, cut and paste it, and Google it. patrickmichalishyn.bandcamp.com. If you go to Discogs, to the Sounds Escaping page, you can buy it through there. And hopefully more gigs come along. I know that Leaf Norman was talking with somebody at Manitoba Music about maybe getting a bit of coin to put on like an experimental synth night that would happen maybe once every 2-3 months. So it's one of those, there's all these little ideas that, we have. Leaf and I, also, he's been guesting on my radio show almost every week, and we bring some synthesizers and pedals, and CKW has a CD player that you can run a line out to into the in and actually broadcast it. So he's been buying really weird spoken word sound effects records, and we play the whole 20-minute side, and then we just make synthesizer music live underneath it.
That's cool.
So we don't have a way to really record it. So it's just kind of, if you're listening to the radio show at the time, then you get this kind of cool experimental thing. He was playing with a drone synth and a couple of pedals and playing underneath Folkways record of someone reading excerpts of Moby Dick.
Oh wow, that's cool. Yeah.
Oh, it was totally weird. It was something that because I know Johnny Sizzle does that with the comic books. I know back in the day, Chris Jakes used to do that on his show, where he just set up and make stuff. And it's kind of cool having something that only exists in that moment too. Like, as much as I want to preserve everything, it's kind of nice to have that complete opposite of, if you're up at 1 o'clock in the morning when we're doing this weirdo stuff on CKUW, then you catch this exclusive piece of music. And if you're, so you miss it.
I mean, as someone who saves everything, like local music related, it kind of hurts me a little bit to hear that, but I do understand the appeal of it though. Like, this is a one-off that, like, if you happen to be there, you catch it, and it can't be replicated, it can't be heard again. There is something to that for sure.
But I'm like you too, where like, if there's a band that I like or an artist that I follow, and there's something that I can't actually own, it drives me absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But now that I'm making the music, like, I'm a CD guy myself, so when there's a band that puts out something that's vinyl only, or if they do like an exclusive 8-track, it drives me up the wall. But now that I'm actually releasing music, I kind of see the appeal of having kind of fringe formats.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I could ever release a record if a label ever, found something that they liked and wanted me to put out a 7-inch or an LP, then I'd be all for it. But yeah, as a consumer, I want it on CD. As a music maker, I don't care.
You just want it out there.
I just want it out there. Yeah. I want some ears to hear it. I want someone to get excited when they listen to my stuff. And then I just like having it online too, so I can listen to it while I'm doing dishes or cooking or whatever.
Right on. So what's, obviously, again, Bandcamp, if you can spell your name, that's the place to go. Is there anywhere on social media people should follow you to find out about potential shows, things like that, maybe happening in the future?
Having me on Facebook, I guess if you wanted, you can add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't really have a page or anything. I've got a YouTube channel where I make music videos for some of the pieces that I do that aren't on Bandcamp. I like finding old public domain videos and chopping them up and putting my music underneath that and just putting out these like weirdo experimental music videos. And those are free to watch on YouTube. Eventually I'm going to have a collection of some singles and one-offs that I want to put together as like a Bandcamp release, or even if I do a CD pressing of something that needs some extra tracks to fill it out, I can put those songs as like bonus tracks to kind of incentivize a physical purchase. and just get it out there eventually.
Awesome.
Yeah.